The IPRO QIN-QIO presents Value in Vaccination video discussion series. Interview by Nadine Spence Clark, Quality Improvement Specialist, IPRO QIN-QIO, New York. Part 1, Getting Information.
So for this segment, we are continuing our discussion about vaccination, and this segment is entitled Getting Information. And so for this segment, I think it's important for us to continue to hear various perspectives. And so at this time, I'm going to bring in Bob and Carolyn Sherwood, and they're going to share with us their experiences of vaccination, first beginning with COVID and as much as they can remember about the pneumonia and the influenza vaccine. So Bob and Carolyn, I'm going to turn things over to you, and you can go ahead and introduce yourselves.
Well, I'm Carolyn Sherwood. I've lived in our community for 13 and a half years, and I'm from various places around the country, but I've lived in Virginia for a good part of my life.
And I'm her husband, Bob. Nadine, we're happy to be with you and hope we can help. As Carrie has said, we've lived here a little over 13 years. Our community has about 380 residents in the four traditional levels of care: independent, where we are, assisted living, skilled nursing, and memory support.
Thank you for sharing that information. I think it's important for people to understand that, all over we have people on various ends of the spectrum, and they're able to share their experiences. And so we thought it was very important to have you here with us today. And so, as I said, this segment is about getting information. Did you feel that you had enough information? Let's start with COVID. Did you feel as though what was being presented to you was enough for you to make an informed decision?
For myself, I certainly did. I've been very sick in January, and having had that event, it was very important to me to get vaccinated as soon as the vaccine was available. So I was looking forward to that.
She was sick. This is January of 2020.
Yes.
Even before COVID was identified as what she had.
But 6 months after that event in January, my doctor informed me that she was very, very certain I had had COVID, although there was no testing or name for it at that time.
I would say that our desire for information was intensified because of the very fact that we're living here in a community.
Yeah.
And all of us understood that we all were responsible for the safety of all the other residents here. And so there was an intense community response and desire for information. I think in my case, I certainly got a lot of information just from listening to the news, reading the newspapers and so forth. Clearly, everybody was very anxious for a vaccine, any vaccine that worked, to be available. We early on read stories that it could take several years to develop a vaccine, and that was pretty troubling. But thankfully, the two that were first approved on an emergency basis were available or announced in December, and then we had our first shots here in mid-January, and the second shot was early in February. Great relief.
The community where we live gave us a lot of information also at community televised meetings. We were able to hear their understanding of it and what they were going to offer and how they were going to run it. Since most of us have been socially isolated, not isolated, but distanced all throughout the time before.
What they gave us was largely government information, both federal, several agencies, and from the state health department. So we weren't short of information.
This is all COVID, but can you think back even to the times of the influenza and the pneumonia vaccine? Can you think back that far as to whether or not you think you had enough information to make an informed decision at that time? Would you compare it to getting the COVID information, or would you say it was a bit different as far as you can remember?
For the influenza, I had been receiving those shots for many years.
Okay.
I didn't worry about that. The community offers those shots for us. We just sign up and go get them. It's a no hassle deal. With the pneumonia shots, I think my doctor was the one that really pushed me to have that and explained why. As I got older, I would need to have that protection more than ever. I have a type of lung disorder, and they don't want me to get pneumonia because it would be a lot harder for me to handle that.
The pneumonia, of course, there have been two different types of shots. The more recent one, a little different in nature and covers more types of pneumonia. And I remember that we needed the two shots about a year apart. But my private doctor was the one who me on all of that, and that went very well.
You mentioned that information from the news and also from, I guess, management and staff there in the community. How did you feel that the information was trustworthy? How did you make that decision, or how did you weigh that to say whether or not it was reliable and trustworthy? What was that like?
For me, I would say that we moved in here and over the years have developed a tremendous trust of the administration and what their decisions are, and the Board of Trustees. I was on the Board of Trustees because of my position in the Residents Association. So I heard things from many different aspects, but I believe that if we didn't feel that we could trust them to make decisions for the whole community, that we wouldn't live here. It's a real trusting environment. The staff and residents have a more of a understanding than I think I would have found in a town had I lived in a house in a town. I think for us, it was not a problem to trust that relationship. As far as the news media goes, you choose to trust whichever one you are reading. If you're a Republican, you trust that. If you're a Democrat, you trust that, But
Right.
I think I'm a believer that science has developed things, that they're not fools, so they're not trying to sabotage us. So, yeah, that didn't occur to me, frankly.
There were certainly reasons enough to wonder about the information being given, because in the beginning, some of the best scientists were confused, didn't know enough about this particular type of virus. And so it took some time before there was a better consensus view from officials, public health officials. But I was also following some of the various universities with their schools of health were saying, and that gave me a great confidence. Also here, we've had doctors on our board of trustees. We have a medical director who provides advice to the nursing side, the medical side of our community, and all of that contributed to build confidence in the information that we were being provided, in addition to what we were learning on our own from the general public.
Any questions or any concerns that you had, were those addressed? Were they knowledgeable enough to clarify any questions that you had, or to point you in the right direction at least?
Yes, we had once a week here. During COVID, we were needing to socially distance, but the in-house television channel that we had here became the critical and central means of communication. And as the administrator, the CEO, and others talked, we could send in by email questions, and there were questions that would come in to those once a week meetings. And the nurse practitioner who runs the clinic, the medical director, and others were answering those questions very carefully, very cautiously. They were balanced responses. They said, yes, this is an emergency use approval for use of the vaccines. It is not a final, but they said, nonetheless, in this emergency with people dying in great numbers, this makes sense for us to do. Now, in the end, of the roughly 380 residents we have here, all but 4 or 5 chose to get vaccinated. This was the Pfizer vaccine in January and February.
Situation is that because I had been so sick, in
Mhm.
January of 20. I felt that I had never wanted to be that sick again, and I would take a vaccine, even if it was a new one, because I did trust that it would not be given to us here if they didn't believe it was also safe.
So you have an opportunity to think about the benefits versus the risk of getting the vaccine.
And
Okay.
when I asked the doctor about should I get that if I had had this virus, if you really think I had the virus? And she said, absolutely. I took care of you. I know what it's like. And she said, I would definitely say get the vaccine. Don't even begin to think you don't need it, because
Right.
you're just going to give yourself more protection.
So pretty much you had confidence in the way that the information was presented. Do you think that the other residents or those around you felt the same confidence? And is that why you had the numbers that you had as far as people being vaccinated? You think that that had a big impact?
Yeah, for the residents, yes. I think that very few people chose not to get vaccinated in the residents.
And so that, that's a lot about COVID, but even with pneumonia and influenza, we know that those are still vaccines that are very important. What would you want to say to people as far as some of the best places to get information if there are people who are still hesitant about not only the COVID vaccine, but the pneumonia and the yearly influenza? What would you say about some of the best sources of information, you think?
I think you have to trust your physician. If you don't have a physician, there are free clinics that if I was not able to have my own physician, I'd go to a clinic, ask them what their opinion is. Because if I were to have an adverse reaction, I would expect somebody like that to take care of me. So I would trust their judgment.
You're asking a really tough question for a lot of people. And I'll answer that in part just by telling you, one of our young, he's a college student, works in dining services here. And the day before the vaccine was to be administered, he came to me and said, Mr. Sherwood, do you think I should get the vaccine? And I said, well, there are reasons on both sides, but I think the question is one of risk assessment. And where is the greatest risk? And what are the benefits on both sides? And I said, no one at this point can be absolutely sure that the vaccine is safe, that is to say, that it won't produce some kind of strange reaction in you 30 years from now. And be effective, that is, will it protect you or not? But I think that on balance, the percentages say get the vaccine. The risks seem very remote, very slight, and the benefits are enormous, not only for yourself and your friends, but anyone else that you are working with, that you are close to. And the next day he came over to me and hugged me and said, thank you, I got it.
Yeah.
Now that doesn't quite answer your question. Who to trust? That's a deep question, and it just seems to me you have to use your very best judgment and think it through. Remember that those who are saying don't get vaccine have motives that they are not presenting. There's a lot of bad information being circulated on exactly that kind of point.
Right.
My own conviction is that you really need to get vaccine. If you love your neighbor, you need to get vaccinated.
Well, and that's a very important point that you said, if you love your neighbor. And I heard you mention before that this was like a community effort, and the safety of the community was something that was of utmost importance. And it was at the forefront of everyone's mind, not only management, but everyone else was considering the safety of the community, the whole, not just the individual, but the whole. Okay.
Right.
It's quite different than if you lived in a house on your own and you only had to worry about immediate neighbors.
Yes.
I think that's the difference that we have here, and I'm glad we have it, frankly.
Very good. So what's the one takeaway as we reach we come to the close of this segment? What's the one takeaway that you would want to leave, each of you would want to leave with our audience today? What's the one thing if you had to sum it up?
One of the things that comes into my thinking is that I hear stories from different people, from a doctor, from a friend, from a family member, all with different opinions. But many times I hear a story that makes me very, very glad I got the vaccine. And knowing that you can trust the sources as you did trust your parents when they got you vaccines as a little kid. Had to remind one of my children that I got you vaccine when you were bathed and you got your children vaccines. So why is it you would trust them and not trust this? To me, the scientists are the people that we respect, and they don't do this for kicks. It's a lot of work.
Nadine, just a final word, maybe. I remember back when I was a kid, a lot of my friends in school got polio,
Right.
Yes.
and
Yes.
parents everywhere were terrified, and came up with a vaccine that hadn't been very well tested.
Mm.
And it was a great risk. And yet, most parents had their children vaccinated because the ravages of polio were so awful, they were willing to take that risk. There, the risk was that it might not work, not that it was unsafe or going to cause damage. They've gotten that far. But basically, the American population took the polio vaccine, and lots of lives and lots of crippling avoided.
Wow, I think that's a great way to end this segment. That's a great point and something that we can definitely point to in history and see where vaccination worked. Well, I really want to thank you both so much for your time today, Bob and Carolyn Sherwood. We really appreciate you sharing your perspectives, and very, very insightful. And we thank you for all that you've done in educating our audience and all that you continue to do. And best to you both. Thank you both so very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nadine. Glad to be there.
Join us for more vaccine support. How? Contact Nadine Spence Clark, Quality Improvement Specialist, nsclark@ipro.org. Visit our website, qi.ipro.org. Follow us on our social media channels, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. This is a product of the collaboration between IPRO, Health-Centric Advisors, and Clarent, serving as the IPRO Quality Innovation Network, quality improvement organization for the New England states, New York, New Jersey, Ohio, Maryland, Delaware, and the District of Columbia.